In this video we're going to focus the Bible GPS on Song of Songs chapter 2 from verses 3 to 13. So there you have the Song of Songs. Those people lived many years before Christ, and we live in the 21st century, and we see that there are differences between language, tradition, time, situation and history. And therefore in the GPS method we go through three processes that will help us to take the message to the 21st century. So the first process is understanding. That takes us to the message to the original receiver. And if we get that message, we ask the question, is that applicable or not? If it's applicable in our time, we communicate it in the 21st century. So let us start with the first process, which is understanding. And by now you realize that we use the acronym of START to get to the message to the original receiver. We first determine the situation in which this passage was written, and then the type of literature helps us how to analyze this passage. And after analyzing the passage, we relate the message to the rest of the Bible, and we also test our findings just to verify that we are on the right track. So this is the acronym of START, the first process of understanding. So let us start with the situation. Now, the title in the Hebrew text is Solomon's Song of Songs, meaning a song by, for, or about Solomon. The phrase Song of Songs means the greatest of songs. Verse 1 appears to ascribe authorship to Solomon, but whether he was the author remains an open question to many scholars. He notes about the language and many other reasons, but that's not very important. Because many scholars deny Solomonic authorship of the book, they date it considerably later than the 10th century BC. This book has caused a lot of debate over the years, both within the Judaic and Christian community. The language is erotic and secular. The name of God does not appear in the book. Modern scholars are almost unanimous in viewing the song as a celebration of sexual love between a man and a woman. For Jewish and Christian interpreters of previous centuries, however, the song was read as an allegory, describing the mutual love of God and Israel, or Christ and the church. Both interpretations can be supported by the text. Type of literature. We see it's poetry, and it's poetry in the wisdom literature. And how do we analyze poetry? We see that we look out for parallelism, similes, metaphors, personification, and hyperbole. Number 2, we mark the main themes. And then we conclude the message to the original receiver. So let us start reading from verse 3. Like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the young men. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. Let him lead me to the banquet hall, and let his banner over me be love. Strengthen me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. His left arm is under my head, and his right arm embraces me. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love, until it so desires. So let us go to verse 3. We see like an apple tree. That is a simile. Like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the young men. And then we see in verse 5 is strengthen me and refresh me with raisins, with apples. That is a very clear parallelism, because the connection of the two lines express the same meaning, just in a different way. Then we see another parallelism in verse 6. His left arm and his right arm is under my head, embraces me. So that is another parallelism. So we see in this passage, so the woman is talking about her beloved. She says, like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the young men, which is very emotional language. She's talking about let him lead me to the banquet hall. His banner over me is love. Strengthen me with raisins, with apples, for I'm faint with love. His left arm is under my head, his right arm embraces me. So she's totally, totally in love. But then she says in verse 7, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. So for her it is about timing, but the timing is exactly right now for her to experience that love. Then we go to verse 8. Listen, my beloved, look, here he comes, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Maybe she's saying he's like a Hollywood star. Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. My beloved spoke and said to me, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. So let us have a deeper look into this. Leading across the mountains, bounding over the hills. So we see the same meaning is expressed in a different way. So this is a parallelism. But it's more than a parallelism. It's across the mountains, over the hills. That is hyperbole. Meaning, it's a conscious exaggeration for emotional effect and to emphasize a point. Because, how can you just come across the mountain over the hills? She's just exaggerating. It's just for emotional effect. So we see also in verse 9 a simile. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. He's very attractive. He's agile. And then look, he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. So we see verse 9 is the simile. And then we see another parallelism, gazing and peering through the windows, through the lattice. And then in verse 10 we see arise is the same as come with me, my darling, my beautiful one. But we see it's a reverse parallelism, therefore it's a chiasm. So arise, come with me, and my darling is the last part of the sentence. Correlates with the first part of the next line, therefore it's a chiasm, it's a reverse parallelism. So she just continues to say how she feels about her beloved, totally in love, and she's using parallelism, simile, and hyperbole to express her feelings. It creates beauty, rhythm, and movement in this poem. Verse 11, see, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth, the season of singing has come. The cooing of doves is heard in our land. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. So we see in verse 11 another parallelism. See, the winter, the rains is past, are over and done, or gone. Then we also see in verse 13 another parallelism. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. It's just how she describes the love, the fruit. It's beautiful, it's attractive, the sweet fragrance. So there's another parallelism, and also we see a chiasm in verse 13. Arise, come, and come with me, my darling, my beautiful one. A reverse parallelism. So one can say, in verses 3 to 13, this is the woman singing and dreaming and expressing her thoughts about her beloved. And if we analyze or conclude and summarize the message, one can say our emotions and union have to develop in unison. The degree of intimacy must coincide with the degree of commitment to the relationship. So we've determined in number 1, 3.1, the parallelisms, the personification. The main theme is the woman. She's talking about her beloved. And if you go back to verse 7, let's just go back to verse 7. Oh, we just want to go through all these, but it's just good to have another look at it. If you see in verse 7, daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. So she's singing and talking and expressing her love, But then we realize that she says that you mustn't need to awaken it before the right time. Therefore, we can conclude and summarize that our emotions, how we feel about someone, our union must develop in unison. The degree of intimacy must coincide with the degree of commitment to the relationship. Otherwise, people will just take you for a ride. Relate the message to the broader biblical and theological framework. While if you read the rest of the Bible, many other places will confirm this. Love is patient, 1 Corinthians 13. Love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it's not proud. It does not dishonor others, take advantage. You just don't jump in bed if there is a well-established relationship, because then you take advantage. You don't honor people. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angry. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And we can see it's exactly how she felt. And Luke 6 verse 31, do to others as you would have them do to you. So it's about that level of commitment must coincide with the emotions. Then we test our findings by reading Bible commentaries, and I think we will be on the right track if you read Bible commentaries and study Bibles, that it will say, that your emotions and union have to develop in unison. The degree of intimacy must coincide with the degree of commitment to the relationship. Why is that? Otherwise, you will experience so much pain. You will just commit yourself to someone, give yourself emotionally, but the other person doesn't do the same, just taking advantage of you. So it needs to develop in unison. Then we need to apply this message. But first we need to determine, is this applicable or not? If it's an incidental, it's cultural, ceremonial, and civil, we don't apply it. If it's essential, we do apply it. And we see this passage has to do with relationships, and it is applicable. It is a morals. Therefore, we can communicate it in the 21st century. So we can have a discussion in a small group, and you can answer these questions in the light of days 108 to 114 of the Bible as your GPS, or pages 80 to 82 of Hearing God's Tweet, where I speak about, have devotions on this passage. You can pause this video and discuss these questions.